when I entered school, I thought it was pre-med, and I went on this course that took tours of the medical center. And the first day I fainted, so I kind of crossed off medical. And then dental was like, do you want to stick your hand in people's mouths the rest of your life? So what was left was law. And, really, to make my parents happy, I went to law school, and I just hated it. I was totally intimidated, and it just fried my brain. So I quit. And honestly, that's the first thing that I ever quit in my life. I remember distinctly at the time that, you have this great fear that, is this a slippery slope? And I think the very valuable lesson is that if you're going to wait for perfection, the world is going to pass you by. And it is only by shipping something that someday you will regret that you will make progress. So, I'm not saying ship crap. I'm saying that ship something that's innovative and revolutionary, that has elements of crappiness to it. Now, the test is not so much, what was version 1 as much as how fast did we get to version 2? So it's a matter of understanding that innovation and revolution is a process.
All right, Steve Jobs is difficult. Elon Musk is difficult. But do you think you can separate the genius from the personality quirks, specifically the negative behavior? Do you think Steve could have done what he did without being a dick?
The argument that says you cannot support it would go like this.
Hey there, this is Larry Weeks. Welcome to the Bounce Podcast. I assume that most of you listening know or have heard of my guest on this podcast today, Guy Kawasaki. Guy had a huge influence on startup culture in Silicon Valley and was most famously known as the chief evangelist at Apple, helping launch the Macintosh line of computers in 1984. He returned again in the mid-90s, around the same time Steve Jobs did, to help rejuvenate Macintosh sales. A lot of current Mac users and iPhone users today, I'm guessing, may not know or remember that at one time Apple was facing financial difficulties and losing market share to Microsoft and IBM. Guy has also written 16 books, beginning with the bestseller, The Macintosh Way. His latest books are Think Remarkable, Wise Guy, and The Art of the Start 2.0. Guy is currently the chief evangelist of Canva and the creator of Remarkable People podcast. He is also an executive fellow at the Haas School of Business, UC Berkeley, and adjunct professor of the University of New South Wales. Guy was an absolute delight to have on, and he was game for a wide-ranging chat about his career, his experiences at Apple, his views on technology and AI, his thoughts on social media, and his experiences with hearing loss and other personal challenges. And we discuss his latest book, Think Remarkable, 9 Paths to Transform Your Life and Make a Difference. We cover everything from his early days when he transitioned from law school, dropping out, to Silicon Valley icon. We talk about his stint in the jewelry business, his view on selling as a fundamental life skill beyond just business, and how tech sales have transformed from trade show, hand-to-hand combat to kind of the digital strategies we see today. We get some insights on the power of maintaining positive narratives during Apple's turnaround days. So Guy was a great guest. So let's get to it. I give you Guy Kawasaki. Guy, thank you so much for agreeing to come on. I'm very thrilled to have you. Big fan. By the way, 2 things we have in common. We both worked at Google, but I was born in Honolulu, Hawaii.
You were?
Yeah, man.
And how long?
I'm a Haole.
How long did you live there?
My dad was in the Navy, so I was there like 2 or 3 years, and then in my 20s, I went back just to go back to so I could see what I missed. I was born in the Pink Tripler Hospital.
Yeah, on the hill.
Yeah, man.
And did you live on base?
Yeah, we lived on base. My dad lived in a Quonset hut, back then, just.
And what did you do? Where'd you live when you came back?
Well, I went to Aiea. I lived in Aiea in a neighborhood up there. So had this house that overlooked Pearl Harbor, and boy, that was, in my 20s. I went for the adventure. Lived there for, maybe a year and a half, and then I worked at the military bases. I sold furniture on these military bases, little stores, the Navy exchanges and stuff. And I would play tennis in Waikiki. I just love it. Was fantastic. But yeah, love Hawaii. So anyway, we got that. I always see you doing that in your pictures. Pretty funny. Yeah. I would go. It's the first time, and it's probably good for me, that I experienced kind of a weird, I won't say racism, but just I was kind of in certain neighborhoods, I felt a little, like I play.
Anti-Howley.
Yeah, I played basketball. I was the only white guy on this team, and it took a while, but they accepted me after a while. I just,
Yeah.
blew it off. I'm like, okay, this is probably good for me. Yeah.
Have you ever seen the movie North Shore?
No, I haven't.
Okay. If you have 2
I need
hours of your life you don't mind wasting and never getting back, I want you to watch the movie North Shore, because it's about this howling surfer who comes to Hawaii to surf, and the initial reaction of the community. And you will truly see the humor of
Yeah.
North Shore.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and I interviewed a guy from that. In fact, I interviewed 2 people in that movie, Sean Thompson, who's a famous surfer, and also Jerry Lopez. Trust me, just
I'm going to check it. That
nothing
hasn't.
better to do.
Welcome to the show, man. The gun has gone off. So I've had a lot of fantastic guests on, and so you are the second one that has been the hardest for me to prep for. So the first one was Seth. It was Seth Godin, because he's just very prolific, but also somebody sent a book the day before. I didn't know a book was coming out, and then the publicist sent me the book like the day before, and I had to cram. So I was like, holy shit. And I had where am I going to go with this conversation? But it turned out fine. And then so I started prepping. So first the book, and then I started doing the research. People are sending me papers, and then I have other people saying, ask these questions. So I got 10 pages of notes, and I don't, so please forgive me, because I'm going to jump around here, but I got so much. It was just very hard to prep for you. And I still, I'm
Larry, as a podcaster, I've been on both sides of this microphone, right? And so I don't know if they pointed you to it. I hope they did. I have a landing page for the book. And on that landing page, I have 99 suggested questions for me.
Shit. No, I missed that. What?
We can postpone this.
So listen, you don't mind? I'd like to dive into your early history. You went to law school. What, for a week, or how long were you you went to law school before?
Don't exaggerate. I went for 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
I just finished college and I went to law school the following year. And there's a whole history, because I'm 3rd generation Japanese American. I'm the 1st generation that went to college. And my father was a local senator in Hawaii, but he had never gone to college. So it's kind of his dream that I go to college and become a lawyer. And back then, this is in the 70s, if you're Asian American, your parents want you to be doctor, lawyer, or dentist. When I entered school, I thought it was pre-med, and I went on this course that took tours of the medical center. And the first day I fainted, so I kind of crossed off medical. And then dental was like, do you want to stick your hand in people's mouths the rest of your life? So what was left was law. And, really, to make my parents happy, I went to law school, and I just hated it. I was totally intimidated, and it just fried my brain. So I quit. And honestly, that's the first thing that I ever quit in my life. I remember distinctly at the time that, you have this great fear that, is this a slippery slope? You quit law school, and next thing
What's next?
you're like, derelict. But, I was afraid that it was a slippery slope and I would be a quitter. But I think that with hindsight, it was one of the best things I did. And people should avoid the label of making people into quitters. People can quit. That doesn't mean you're a quitter. Just like
it can be strategic. Yeah.
Things.
Yeah. So when you quit, did you have an option in your head, or was it like, I just can't take this?
Listen, I wish I could tell you I had this all planned out, but that would be bullshitting you. So I was so miserable. I was just so my brain was fried. I just quit. And I didn't want to go back to Hawaii because it's like, then you got to contemplate suicide because you just like 2,000 years of my ancestors worked to
Hmm.
get me into this law school. And then I quit after 2 weeks. So I returned to where I went to college and I worked for a professor there. And I went to Stanford and I really loved Stanford. So I went back there and I worked. And then the following year, I went and got my MBA from UCLA because I was interested in business, not law.
Okay. And I also read you outline this in some of your other books. You wrote a book about your life, but you work for a jewelry
Yes.
manufacturer. Is that right?
Yes.
And you learned how to
Oh,
sell
yeah.
there. Is that
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
learned how to sell.
So when I was in the MBA program at UCLA, I met a woman who worked at a jewelry manufacturing company. And the UCLA MBA program at that time was 4 days a week. And I come from a lower middle income family. So it's not like I was living off a trust fund. So if I wanted spending money, I'd have to earn my spending money. So I went to work for this jewelry company, literally counting diamonds and, that kind of level clerical work with something valuable, but still it's clerical work. Could be widgets or nuts and bolts. It was diamonds. And after my MBA, unlike my friends who went to Wells Fargo and, Lehman Brothers and Anderson Consulting and B of A, I went to this small family owned jewelry manufacturer in downtown LA in a sales and marketing kind of role. And the jewelry business is hand to hand combat. I mean, it's true sales. And we were selling to retailers who sold to consumers. So we weren't selling to people who were looking for engagement rings. We were selling to manufacturers.
Oh, got it.
Excuse me. We're selling to retailers who
Retail.
sold
Yeah.
to people looking for engagement rings. And the jewelry business is a tough business because, in a sense, you can stick a ring on a scale and figure out that there's so many grams of gold and the spot price of gold that day is X. So you know exactly how much in gold there is in that ring. And
Hmm.
everything above and beyond that, some retailers consider that excess profit. They think they're
Hmm.
buying raw gold as opposed to the design and the quality and the
Hmm.
romance and the brand and the image.
Hmm.
And so you really learned how to sell. I mean, hand to hand combat sell. And I have come to believe that basically in life, there are two essential functions. You can either make it or you can sell it. Everything else is bullshit. So I'm not an engineer. I'm not capable of making it. So I am so fortunate I learned how to sell in the jewelry business, which, believe it or not, helped me in the tech business because a lot of the tech business is selling. And this is before, when people think of selling today, they always think of, A/B tests. If my homepage has a blue
The
line
website
versus a
sells.
purple
Yeah.
line, do I get 1.6% more click-throughs? This is not that kind of selling. This is wait in the lobby for hours, pray you get a meeting, pray you get an order, pray they confirm the order, pray that you ship them, pray that you pay. I mean, there's a lot of prayer involved in sales.
And some of that was your role, right? When you joined Apple, is
Yeah.
to get some resellers and others to adopt the computer or what have you. But let me ask you. So I totally agree with you about the value of selling, and whether that be you're selling yourself or selling a product or pitching to investors or what have you. Do you think, because of Zoom and the internet, you alluded to it, website traffic, getting traffic and what have you. I wonder if we're losing the opportunity to develop that kind of foundational skill. I don't know. Everything's evolving, what have you. But do you have an opinion about that? Did someone train you when you were at the jewelry store? Did they train you how to sell, or is that something you had to kind of pick up because of?
The training was, here's a bag, here's a list of customers, send us your gas receipts. At an extreme, my wife out of college worked for Procter and Gamble. And at
Ah,
Procter and Gamble, I mean, they truly understand sales, right? And how do you? This is your target region, and this is the stores you call on, and we want tied in the front, and we want bold one line down, and
hmm.
and this is the training course and all that. And I had none of that. And I tell you, if you're a young person listening to this, the concept of going to work for a Procter and Gamble or an IBM it may not sound attractive to you, but I'm telling you, you will learn skills that you will use the rest of your life. I think a lot of people think that, oh, I'm a natural. I can just go out there, shuck and jive and sell. And you don't know what you're in for, man.
I also think about companies. I was looking at Microsoft's ascendance of late from a capitalization and stock versus, let's say, Google, Alphabet, right? And the products when they roll out and how they roll products out. And you know what? I I remember when I was at Google, at least when I was there, and it wasn't that long ago, that they kind of had the Lloyd Dobler approach to selling. They kind of looked down on it. They never said that, but they kind of had that attitude. I don't want to sell anything, buy anything, or process anything as a career. I don't want to sell anything, bought or processed. It's just kind of this. Hey, we're bigger than that. But Microsoft had this whole selling culture. Back in the day, they kind of had to do it. I guess my point is, Google will have some fantastic products that they'll just sit on or constantly test, test, test. You know what I mean? And it's like, guys, get it out there. Let's go. But anyway, I just think I totally agree with you. Sales is an important skill that everybody should learn. I don't care what business tech. I don't care. I don't care if you're a programmer. By the way, that's the other thing. You can write beautiful code, be the most talented person, but you got to pitch it. You got to tell people about it, that kind of thing. So
Listen, I used to believe in the if you build it, they will come theory. Don't get me wrong. And I consider myself a marketer, but I'm a sort of supply side marketer. I think the key to great marketing is a great product. Definitely the key to evangelism is a great product because it is so easy to evangelize good stuff and it's so hard to evangelize shit. So, if you have a choice, guess what you should pick? And yet, yes, there's maybe less interactive, personal, one-on-one analog sales, but it's a new skill set to have a good interaction on Zoom, right? I mean, you can't take that for granted either. And there are people who are better virtually than others virtually. I mean, that is another skill set too. In a sense, it's like when Alexander Graham Bell created the telephone, some people were better using telemarketing than others, right? It's a skill. And so now, it may be that everybody's walking around with these Apple, virtual reality things. That's a whole new level of skill. I hope I don't have to walk around with those dumbass things on. Oh my God.
I want to get to that because I'm so curious as to what you think of Apple products now, and that one just came out, so I want to get to that. But I'll put a pin in that, and I want to talk about your new book. But you just said we're talking about sales skills, how that translates into other areas. I sold a bunch of stuff, when I was a kid, or in I'm not an introvert, so talking to people doesn't bother me. So I do understand that aspect of someone's personality, and I've done some copywriting in my life, and that was easier for me because I kind of knew what to say, or I had
Right.
experience talking to people, which translates into writing. But what's fascinating is in your new book, you mention a lot of famous people who've overcome a lot of challenges. You talk about Julia Childs. You mentioned in the book, I guess you did some research on her, that she did some copywriting for some store or something.
A
Is that right?
furniture store.
A furniture store. I'm blown away by that. That's fantastic.
But even better is that my book is divided into three parts: growth, grit, and grace. And in the growth section, I say that there's kind of two general ways to grow. One is along the same curve, and another is to jump curves, to change completely, right? So Jane Goodall has stuck with biology her whole life. Julia Child, she started off writing copy for a furniture store in New York. And then she became a spook of all things, working for what became the CIA. And then she moved to France, where she fell in love with French cooking. And that's why we know who Julia Child is, not because she was a spook, but because she wrote the French cookbooks, right? And she had the French TV shows. And I think that's an example of a growth mindset that you can go from furniture copywriter to spook to chef to TV personality. And
Yeah.
that's an important lesson. Now, I think it's very important for parents that, if you think that at the age of 5, you're going to introduce your kid to the violin or the cello or the piano or the tennis racket, and you're going to determine their whole life, I think you're doing them a big disservice. They should have the freedom to sample.
Yeah. I just talked to Derek Sivers, founded CD Baby and sold it, but he
Yeah,
was a circus performer,
right.
musician, just wildly different
Yeah.
work and things, but it makes you an incredibly interesting person. There is some prep that
Oh, yeah.
it sets you up for to embrace unexpected, to
Well,
handle randomness, you know?
well, I mean, Derek Sivers, being the ringmaster in a circus for Derek Sivers is the equivalent of me selling jewelry, because
Exactly.
Derek Sivers was a ringmaster. So guess what you learn as a ringmaster? You learn how to express yourself. You learn how to excite people, right? So now when you're at TED and you're talking, it's just like being a ringmaster. That prepared him for this great TED talk, and launched his sort of fame. I talk about him in my book, and who knows, if he hadn't been a ringmaster, I'm not saying he would have not succeeded, but as you look back, in the words of Steve Jobs, you can connect those dots. It's easy to see
Yeah.
how a good ringmaster could be a good presenter and a good entrepreneur.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned grit, and you talk about grit in your book. I want to set something up for you because you, of all people, will be great to address this. So there are people, I think, working in companies, and they're working for, let's say, somebody difficult or demanding, right?
Yeah.
But they are just quitting left and right. Somebody is difficult, somebody is very demanding, and you've been in startups. But my point is, I've been through the difficult bosses, the startup environments, the stress. I get it. But could you just address the importance of grit in those kind of situations? Because you do admit, and by the way, I read Walter Isaacson's book about Steve Jobs, and wow, incredibly difficult. If that's accurate, if the book was accurate, it could be a dick, right?
Yeah.
Could be,
Yeah.
that behavior's there. And there are a lot of bosses out there, a lot of people right now listening to us who have very, very difficult bosses. And could you just address that?
Sure. Sure. So first of all,
And by the way, I'm not saying stay in a bad situation
yeah.
where you're being abused or whatever. I'm not saying that. I'm saying very intelligent people out there you could learn from that are very difficult. They're wrapped in sandpaper. Okay.
um, as they say, every rose has thorns, but I would tell you that, listen, working for Steve Jobs, he was an asshole. Don't get me wrong. But he was, and I think that this is a very important distinction. He was a mission driven asshole. And his mission was to make people more creative and more productive with Macintoshes and iPhones and iPods and iPads and iMacs and Genius bars and everything, right? So, there are assholes who are all about themselves, right? I mean, I'm an asshole because I want personal glory, personal wealth, personal everything. They're not driven by a mission, they're driven by ego. That's the kind of people to avoid. And I know a lot of people who work for Steve Jobs, and listen, he like ran over us multiple times. I have no regrets for working for him. I think I am where I am because of him. And if I could ever go back and work for him again, I absolutely would do it without even thinking twice. And about 3 weeks ago, the 40th anniversary of Macintosh happened, and they brought about 40 people back from the division, or maybe 20 people back from the division. And you know what? I mean, it was just like a full of love, and we talked about Steve-isms and Steve quirks, and how great it was and how he ripped on us and all that. And but you could just feel in the room, this was admiration, this was love. I kind of don't believe that 40 years from now, there's going to be a Tesla reunion and they're going to all talk about Elon Musk this way. Okay. Just let me go on the record there.
There's a difference.
Yeah, there is a
Yeah.
difference. And what I learned, and it may take you 20 years to figure this out, but I think as you look back on your life, the coaches, the teachers, the bosses that were the hardest on you probably taught you the most. And the ones you can get around and get away with murder and all that stuff, you thought, oh, yeah, I found an easy teacher, easy boss, easy coach. You're going to look back someday and say, that was a waste of time. And I mean, think about the players who played for Vince Lombardi or Bobby Knight or, somebody like that. Those people love those coaches. And from the outside looking in, you see Bobby Knight throwing the chair and all this kind of stuff. But I tell you, the people who taught me the most are Steve Jobs, an English teacher in high school and a coach in high school, all of whom were very tough on me.
Yeah, I was part of a startup, and I remember I was handed a management job right when, '07, when the economy was tanking, and our clients, it was a tech startup, but our clients were the largest retailers pretty much out there in the world who were moving online, and I would look at the stock tickers every day and see Circuit City go out of business. I would see our clients go out of business. But when we get together and we found a successful exit, it was fantastic. But when we get together now, just like we have wonderful war stories, we look back to your point in fondness of how we survived it. We got through it. We have all these stories. You know what I mean? So it's hard to say. It's hard to say to somebody listening to this that's in it, but you will.
You really will. I mean,
You'll learn. Life is learning. You're going to get some skills from this, and if you can survive that, you can survive anything, kind of a thing.
I'll give you an analogy. So my family and I, pretty much every year we go to Hawaii because I'm from Hawaii, right? And so we go to Hawaii and we have great food, we have great surfing sessions, we have great, we have a great time in Hawaii. But one year in Hawaii on New Year's Eve, we were staying in this Airbnb house where the host had a boat. And the host said, New Year's Eve, we'll take you and your family out on the water, and then we'll take you from Hawaii Kai to Waikiki where the fireworks are. Okay. So we get on this boat, all of us, and going out was not so bad, but coming back, it was choppy and like all my kids are throwing up and they're all sick and all that. And we get back and we're like kissing the ground because there was a small craft warning and, all this stuff. And guess what? Now, when we talk about Hawaii, do we talk about the great meals, the great surfing sessions, no, we always talk about, remember that time we all got on that boat, we almost died and everybody was throwing up and, those are fun times.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I just want to touch on some things when you were at Apple. But by the way, was it your role or did you invent the word evangelist when it comes to the...
Well, first there was
Did
Jesus.
you coin it or was it?
There was a 2,000-year gap. Okay.
No, yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, in the tech world now, because it's now a role everywhere, right? But I got a friend that's a digital vet.
I am the second software evangelist. The first software evangelist, a guy named Mike Boych.
Or Mike Boych. Sorry, Mike.
Evangelism comes from a Greek word meaning bringing the good news. And so what an evangelist does is bring the good news, bringing the good news of Jesus Christ and eternal life, or bringing the good news of Macintosh, making people creative and productive, or bringing the good news of Canva, making them great communicators because they can increase their graphic design skills. And so we evangelize Macintosh and I evangelize Canva. And the difference, we've been talking about sales, but I think the difference between evangelism and sales is that evangelism, don't get me wrong, it's good for the evangelist too, but you also have the other person's best interests at heart. So when I tell people to use a Macintosh, I really do believe I have their best interests at heart. I'm not trying to get them to do something that I know they're going to regret.
So I have people that are product managers. I've got CEOs listening to this. So I just want to touch on product because you just have some great insights. You mentioned back in the day with Apple that I have a quote here that says that you said the original Mac was a piece of crap, but it was a revolutionary piece of crap. So
yes,
what did you mean by a revolutionary piece of crap? So did you mean, was it like an MVP? Would revolutionary imply viability or something? What do you mean?
I think that every product that is innovative and revolutionary, it starts off crappy. And I mean, if you look in 1975, the first digital camera invented by Kodak was, I don't know, 10 pounds, 100 pixels, not hardly a Sony A9 or a Sony A7. And if you remember the first Motorola cell phones back in the day, if you had a cell phone in your car, it was because there was a 10-pound thing in your trunk and the wire went through into your front, right? And the Motorola portable phone was the size and weight of a brick. And so the Motorola cell phone was a revolution, but it was a piece of crap compared to what it is today. And I think the very valuable lesson is that if you're going to wait for perfection, the world is going to pass you by. And it is only by shipping something that someday you will regret that you will make progress. So, I'm not saying ship crap. I'm saying that ship something that's innovative and revolutionary that has elements of crappiness to it. Now, the test is not so much, what was version 1 as much as how fast did we get to version 2? So it's a matter of understanding that innovation and revolution is a process. It's not an event.
So you're at Apple, what, from 83 to what was the timeline?
I started at Apple in the fall of 1983. Macintosh was introduced at the beginning of 84.
January,
Yeah.
At the end of January, right?
January 24th, 1984.
But you came back, so Apple was struggling in the 90s, right? Did they almost go out of business, or is that hype?
In my mind, it was never a case of how we're going to meet payroll. I mean, It was never as bad as the press wants to make it. Although I would also tell you that it's never as good as the press wants to make it with Apple. Whenever Apple is covered by the press, you have to back off whatever they're saying.
You've got to be meet in the middle somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't like Apple was, running out of money to pay for the electricity. And yet people were condemning it. They're saying that the Macintosh platform cannot reach critical mass. Michael Dell is saying, give back the money to the shareholders and close up shop. It's a Windows world. Give it up, boys. And, in a sense, I left Apple in 87 and 97. So, shame on me. If I had, quote unquote, known it was going to be the most valuable company in the world, I would have stuck it out, right? So I can't tell you I'm clairvoyant. But I'll tell you something. One of the lessons I learned that I write about in this book is that the grass is not always greener. And sometimes it's better to stay in the pasture you're on and fertilize the water and the grass around you.
I thought it was cool, and I actually took a note on this, and I didn't know this. When you came back to Apple, tell me if this is right. To bolster the spirits of the true believers in Apple, you set up Evangelist. It was an opt-in email list. You would feature positive news about the Mac and Apple and the latest announcements. It was a crucial time, like the company was kind of faltering, so you kind of kept these users engaged. That's a wonderful lesson in my mind for companies and businesses to have that relationship, right, and build that.
So in 1997, when I was coming back, I came back because everybody thought Apple was going to die, and I loved Apple. And so I started something called Evangelist, as in list server. And this list server, which is kind of like, to use an analogy today, it's kind of like MailChimp today.
Be like a newsletter? Newsletter? Okay.
It was a regular email newsletter, had 44,000 subscribers. And back then,
was anybody doing this?
Nope. So back then, every story you read about Apple, it's almost like they all had the same template. Every story said the beleaguered Apple computer. Every one of them, some negative adjective in front of Apple. And so I decided that I would have a thing called Evangelist, which would only publish positive news about Apple. And if you want to go find negative news, you can go find it anywhere. But if you want only positive news to balance it out, you subscribe to Evangelist. And I'll tell you, I don't know where you are politically, Larry, but I swear to God, yesterday, I was surfing, and I don't know how I got on this idea. I said, you know what? I should do a Joe Biden list. And this list will only
You
have
should.
good news about Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Not that he's getting senile, not that his son is a crook, and not that this, not that it's just good news. And I thought maybe I should do evangelist of Joe Biden.
Yeah. Somebody should. So you know what I was thinking, Guy, and because there was something about in the 90s also when that campaign Think Differently came out in Apple, and that it wasn't really about the product so much as it was appealing to identity, or
Yes.
it was some of our higher ambitions or whatever, but it put a halo around the Apple product. So I built a platform for content creators, and I would send in my emails updates on product features or update, we got this new thing, whatever. And one time I sent something different. And I said up front, I did a disclaimer. I said, hey, by the way, this is not a product update. So if you want to just delete it, whatever, but I'm gonna talk about something else. It had nothing to do with the product, but it was just an encouraging email about creativity and about pursuing your dreams or whatever, right? I got more positive feedback just from that one. It shocked the hell out of me, Guy. And I'm like, I got to do more of that. People, this is, there's some kind of connection there. There's something outside of the product that's related, but
Yeah.
that just came to my. I was thinking
Well,
that.
I think you're absolutely right that there are certain sort of lifestyle or philosophy products, right? So when you buy into the Apple world, you're buying into a world of creativity and productivity and coolness and something like that. And when you buy Air Jordans, it's not just Michael Jordan's shoes. And when you buy, let's say, Carhartt products, you're buying into this thought of, rugged American construction worker, no bullshit, And what's wrong
I
with
think
that? I
Tesla. I
mean,
think that gave some wind to Tesla to it early on, right? Because
absolutely.
it represented the future or something.
Yeah. But I have to say now, I think that probably people buy Teslas despite Elon Musk, not because of Elon Musk, because he's gone
well now,
so
yeah.
off. I don't know
Because
where he.
some people are selling them because of
Yeah.
I think he does
I will
himself a
never buy a
disservice.
Tesla.
Yeah, I think he does himself. By the way, I have to do this because you mentioned it earlier, and I've asked other guests, kind of in the tech world about this. All right, Steve Jobs is difficult. Elon Musk is difficult, but do you think you can separate the genius from the personality quirks, specifically the negative behavior? Do you think
Ah,
Steve could have done what he did without
yeah.
being a dick? Do you think Elon could have done what he did without being a dick?
The argument that says you cannot support it is such would go like this, that these kind of personalities are so demanding that they force people to go beyond their self limits, and they rise to the occasion and they do better than they ever could. And that, and you could say that about Bobby Knight and Vince Lombardi, et cetera too, right? They took players who might not have been all pros, but they made them into great players and a great team. So that's the argument that, yes. On the other hand, man, I sure hope that people don't get the impression that, oh, to be successful, I got to be an asshole, because that's not true either. I mean, you don't have to be an asshole to be successful, but you do have to have high standards. And every once in a while, you may have to push somebody back and push, you may have to like exert your will, but that doesn't mean you need to be a 24 karat egocentric asshole.
Yeah, I think of it as a tool, that it's pulled out for certain situations.
Yeah.
I hate to make it that utilitarian, but you know what I mean? It's like if I've got to fight this battle, sometimes I have to be a little blunt or whatever it is. I don't know, but that's how I prefer to think of it. But anyway, I just thought I'd ask. I'm also curious because you've written a book on social media. I think you were part of the Google Plus efforts, right?
Yeah.
The social platform for Google. By the way, that ended 2019, which surprised me. I thought it ended earlier than that, but that. By the way, I thought that was a great product and great idea. So I'm not sure what happened there, but what do you? I'm going to get to the book, but I would love your opinion on social media as it stands today. Like, because you're a big proponent, you're evangelist kind of for various social media platforms. Is there a way to not throw the baby out with the bathwater? And what do you think the baby is there? Right? To me, it's connection and what the ultimate vision was. But what do you think? By the way, are you on any of these? Or are you off or
I
people?
still have a Twitter/X account. I'm not active on it. And I'll tell you the reason why. I just don't agree with all the stuff going on there. But I don't want to, I see a lot of people who in a fit of rage and because they want to make a stand, they quit Twitter, right? They close their account. My fear is if I did that and I quit, somebody else is going to get at Guy Kawasaki and it's not going to be me. And then what happens if at Guy Kawasaki now starts posting, racist,
Wow, I hadn't even thought about
pedophilia,
that.
who
Yeah.
knows, right? And then
Wow.
I gotta like go explain, oh no, that wasn't me. That's somebody who got my username. I don't need that aggravation. So I am most active on LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn as my social media. I'm playing with Threads, but I'm not convinced Threads is, gonna be that great either. So the reason why I'm on LinkedIn is because I think that LinkedIn, unlike any other service, there is a very easy to understand value proposition of why you should be who you are and why you should behave, which is on LinkedIn. If you're an asshole, it might affect you in terms of jobs, partnerships, reputation.
Mm.
Any place else, you can just, you can go be the Nazi you are. But LinkedIn, you better behave. And so I think LinkedIn has a real sort of compelling reason why it could be the best social media platform, except that Microsoft doesn't look at it that way. And Microsoft, I don't know, maybe they just don't have the balls to make it into a social media network.
It seems like it's going that way, regardless of Microsoft. It almost seemed like Microsoft was guiding it that way, but just because of the emergent aspects of it.
It would be a very interesting exercise to ask yourself, what if Google hadn't punted on Google Plus and if Google Plus was still here today?
The conversations on Google Plus were so smart, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They were different level of either personalities or people. That's the shame of it, is that I think we did lose something that was different. I don't know how it happened that way, but the conversations were very different than what I see on social media. Are you on Facebook, or do you use Facebook at all?
I'm on Facebook. For most of my social media, I view it as a means to an end. It's a promotional platform. It's not for me to honestly, it's not for me to be social. I have one wife, 4 kids, 10 or 15 good friends. I have all the social interaction I want and can handle. I'm not looking to be more social. So for me, social media is a platform for promotion.
I also learned that you were on the Wikimedia Foundation Board of Trustees, right?
Yes.
With the goal there, I think, was the democratization of knowledge and what have you.
Yes.
What do you think of AI these days? Generative AI.
Listen,
Are you excited? You frightened? What do you?
I could not be more excited about AI. I think AI is a bigger deal than personal computers, semiconductors, social media, and the internet, the steam engine, mass production, all combined. I think that AI has the greatest potential to save mankind because mankind ain't going to do it alone. So I am a total believer in AI. And yes, I know there are dangers, but listen, I ask people this whenever I get that question like this, and they think I'm being facetious, but I'm not. I'm saying, like, let's suppose that there are nuclear weapons in the world and something has to control when nuclear weapons are launched. So here's a quick multiple choice test. Who can launch nuclear missiles? Donald Trump, Kim Jong-un, Vladimir Putin, or Chat GPT? Pick one. Just pick one, because I would pick Chat GPT.
That's a great heuristic. Thinking outside the box. Well, good. So obviously you're positive. Well, cool. I am too, but I'm just taking everybody's temperature to see. Are you involved in any way with any companies, by the way? I'm just curious. No. Okay. All right.
I'm over the hill already.
Over the hill.
I use Gemini now, which used to be Bard. I
Yeah.
use
Yeah.
ChatGPT. I use Perplexity, which I don't know. That is the world's stupidest name for a product in artificial intelligence. That would be like calling LinkedIn disconnected. Using a outside vendor to help me. I've built Kawasaki GPT on Chat GPT, and Kawasaki GPT only contains my writing, my blogs, the transcriptions of all my podcasts. And I swear, Larry, I swear to God, if you go to Kawasaki GPT and ask a question as if you're asking Guy, you will get a better answer from Kawasaki GPT than Guy Kawasaki himself. And in fact, Larry, I go to Kawasaki GPT to ask myself questions as the starting
That's a
point for
great.
much of what I write.
That's a great use case. I thought about, by the way, I'm in the middle of doing what you're doing for my podcast. I'm trying to, feed it and it's not great at search. I found out. So I have to put a layer for the search part based on a keyword because it has all this knowledge of my stuff anyway. And then it wants to step in. But what I said, look, go search for this specifically, but it wants to step in and go, no, I got the answer. So
Yeah.
I'm putting a layer of search over it, and then I'm going to have that human kind of answer. So let's talk about the book, Think Remarkable: 9 Paths to Transform Your Life and Make a Difference. So just some snippets here in what people's appetite for the book, but since you talk about challenge and perspectives and people resilience and the whole 9 yards, and being remarkable. In fact, I think the definition you have about being remarkable is remarkable people overcome challenges like abuse, addiction, afflictions to attain whatever goals they're shooting for. You lost your hearing last year, is that right?
See this cochlear implant?
Oh, okay.
So I am completely deaf on this side. I have about maybe 25% hearing on this side. Let's just say that being a deaf podcaster isn't the easiest thing in the world. However, it's not impossible. And I will also tell you that there it lies a lesson in this too, because sometimes you need your heroes, right? And you need someone to show you that it can be done. So listen, I'm no Beethoven, but I look at myself, I say, you know what? If Beethoven can compose the Fifth Symphony, surely you can interview people on a podcast, Guy. I mean, a cochlear implant is a miracle that I went from deaf to be functionally hearing. And we've done this whole interview, and it's not like, I'm making you repeat things or anything, right?
No.
It's a beautiful thing. It is a miracle.
Can you hear as you did prior to, when you had your hearing?
No,
or is it a different kind of, yeah?
Yeah, the timbre is different, the tone is different, things are tinny, and some people's voice are very hard for me, others are very easy. It's all over the map. Listening to music is useless because nothing sounds good. But you know what, Larry, I got to tell you something. It's all relative. And first of all, nobody has ever died from deafness. That's number one. And number two, if God said to you, Larry, you can either be deaf or you can have pancreatic cancer. You have 30 seconds to give me the answer. I don't need 30 seconds. I'd rather be deaf, man. So, you know what? I mean, listen, I, in my podcast and in my book, I've written about people who have overcome much more than deafness. So don't feel sorry for me.
Was it a sudden thing, or were you just having hearing issues?
I've had something called Meniere's disease for years. Meniere's disease is when you have tinnitus, hearing loss, and vertigo. So that's been true for about 2 decades. And the final step here is you lose your hearing. Now, I could go to double cochlear implant, so I could have one on each side, or knock on wood, work on stem cells and other things is going to help me recover hearing. But I'm 69. The clock is ticking.
Yeah. So
but
how did you?
Larry, it is what it is, Larry.
Yeah. How did you do the podcast? Was it captions?
Well, there was a period.
Yeah.
There was a period when I was really kind of deaf, but not yet cochlear implant. And like I remember having to interview Neil deGrasse Tyson, relying completely on Chrome
Oh,
transcription,
oh my gosh.
and that was not easy.
I can imagine. I had Neil on, and yeah, I was so intimidated, right?
Yeah,
And if you just are a little off, he's very nice, but he will call you on
yeah.
if you're like, no, no, that's not how Fermi's paradox works. So the reason I'm asking is because I had Dan Ariely on. In fact, there's a whole TV show made, based on his book, The Irrational. And Dan Ariely, when I was booking him for the podcast, he would send me recordings of replies sometimes. And so I finally just asked. So when he was younger, he was burned on over a third of his body. And I asked him, I said, well, when we were talking about his difficulty with his burns, I said, so did it relate to your hands? Because I said, you sent me emails that were voice. He goes, yeah, Larry, and then he showed me he only has a certain amount of hours or time that he can use his hands and then he can't. But he's written all these books. He replies to email, he just carries on. So anyway, very similar. So I was like, recently my right eye I'm having a problem with my right eye. And then I had an animal bite my finger, so I couldn't type. But I'm so glad I'm so glad I have perspective of other people, right? This whole world of people that have a way worse, and
Oh yeah.
it makes you realize, wait a minute, no, 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 that this can be handled. There's a
I
way
mean,
here. Yeah.
Larry, if for the rest of my life, if like one night I go to sleep and I have a stroke and the next morning I'm dead, and the only thing that happened between now and then is this deafness, sign me up. Where do I sign for that deal? I
Yeah.
would sign up for that deal anytime.
Yeah. Yeah. So the book, you have a writing device in there at the beginning, I think, of each chapter. It's throughout the book. And you have these bullets or you have these questions or statements. So, like at the beginning, you'll say something like, you want to X. You're
Right,
curious if, you're
right.
wondering if. Tell me, is that a predictive form of textual hypnosis? What do you, well, why that
No,
style? What is,
you gi- you're giving me way too much credit for intelligence, Larry. So, so this is what happened. So I wrote this book, and I really want to get Gen X and the millennials to read this book. I mean, I think, I want it to be like the next four agreements, if you're familiar with that book. Every
yes.
Gen X millennial has read the four agreements. I want this to be, the
Mm,
next four agreements. And so I have friends who are, and she's in the book, public school teacher in high school, et cetera, et cetera. And one day she says to me, Guy, I read your draft, and I got to tell you something. I hate to tell you, Guy, but you use examples of people like Christy Yamaguchi and Jane Goodall and all that. And these high school students, I mean, they might not know who Jane Goodall is or Christy Yamaguchi. Well, Jane Goodall, everybody knows Jane Goodall, but I mean, I've even found that that's not to be assumed either. And so I says, well, who are the heroes to Gen X? And she says to me, Olivia Juliana. And I say, who's Olivia Juliana? Because I'm not Gen X. And then she explains it to me and all that. So I made this concerted effort to get Olivia Juliana. So Olivia Juliana opens up the book. Now, you may wonder, like, what the hell does this have to do with these questions at the start of every section? And another thing that this teacher told me is that Gen X, they don't want to read 300 pages about one idea. They want it like bam, 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 bam. And they want, even before they read the bam, 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 they want to know that this section is pertinent to what they are interested in. So I came up with this convention that before every section, there's 3 questions to pose to you so that you understand that if you're having problems with changing your perspective on life about growth, these are the 3 issues in this section. These are the 3 issues we cover so that you can determine for yourself if this section is pertinent to you before you even waste 10 minutes reading 3 pages. I
mm.
have it down to such a granularity that I want people to really I want them to really know what they're getting in the next 3 pages.
I like the device, how I used it. My dad's always told me, if you're doing a presentation or writing, tell them what you're going to tell them,
Yep.
then tell them what you told them. Right.
Yep.
So I liked it. By the way, it was good for me because I was trying to dig in there for the podcast, and it kind of says, okay, it's like a TLDR or something. Any tips? Because I'd like to write a book like you did with my interviews. Did you just compile all the transcripts and pick kind of the best
Oh,
ones, or was that hard to kind of whittle it down, or
okay. So
secret sauce?
I've
Like
had,
that?
I'm going to tell you my sauce. I don't know if it's secret. I had about 200 interviews when I wrote the book. So 200 interviews, which is 200 hours. Each interview transcript is about 20 pages. So I had like 4,000 pages. And literally, one of the first things we did is we printed all 4,000 pages. Okay. And then I had in my mind, because of the work I did with the podcast, I had the basic outline of, okay, everybody who's remarkable has a growth phase, and then they have a grit phase, and then they have a grace phase where they're paying back society. And, so now in growth, what's necessary for growth? And there's these 10 concepts. So I had the framework, right? But then to make it live and believable, I had to figure out what stories relating to the growth mindset are in these 4,000 pages. And Larry, I swear to God, what we did is we searched for the word growth, and we found the 300 places the word growth was mentioned. And we looked at every one of them to figure out which one could be used for this section.
Hmm.
And that's what it took. And so, in my mind, I say to myself, well, there's so much great information in those transcripts and podcasts, but nobody's going to listen to 200 hours and read 4,000 pages. So what Madison and I, my co-author, did is we took 4,000 pages down to 170 for people. That's the service we provided. Now, today, if I were going to do that, I would probably throw AI at it.
Yeah, I was
And
about to say.
I would like put, in fact, I have put all 4,000 pages into Kawasaki GPT. And I could say, okay, what's the key to the growth mindset? And Kawasaki GPT will spit out, these are the 10 key steps. And Kawasaki GPT will say, this happened in Carol Dweck's episode at the 10-minute and 30-second mark. So it could be much easier with ChatGPT now.
Yeah, I was about to say. Too bad you didn't when you were going through the book. But
Yeah.
so you just type things out, or you dictate, then you type?
So my method is this. I spend 6 to 9 months just doing the outline. No
Really?
body text, just
Wow.
doing the outline.
Wow.
And I feel like I cannot start a book until I have the outline set. And then once I have the outline set, I just pour in text. And
Do you do title first? Do you do the title?
I always think I have the title, but the title changes 10 times between the start and the end.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm pouring in text. And so the metaphor that I like to use, although it is a grotesque metaphor, is that basically once I have the outline, I just vomit everything out. And then I spend the next year picking out the pieces of food and throwing away the rest of the vomit. That's my writing process. I interviewed a guy named Mark Manson who wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving a You-Know-What, right?
I've talked to Mark.
Great book. Great book. And in our interview, he said, Guy, you've discovered your passion, your calling, your ikigai when it involves a shit sandwich that you love. And the shit sandwich in writing a book is the constant editing over and over and over. You have to edit. And most people from the outside looking in saying, what a shit sandwich. Why would you want to do that? But that's the shit sandwich that I love. I love editing. Same thing with podcasting. I love editing podcasts and preparing for the recording.
Yeah, I agree about editing, because sometimes you didn't hear something, even though we're talking, sometimes it doesn't sink in what the guest said. And then when I'm editing, I'm go, holy shit, that's gold. Because, you're always thinking about what you're going to ask next, and, you get in your own way. So you have a passage in the book about vulnerability. You say the flip side of the growth mindset is vulnerability. The word comes from, by the way, I did not know this. I've used the word vulnerability. I did not know that it means wound. I did not
Yes.
know that. So
Yes.
you say becoming remarkable will take time. You will face failure and setbacks. So the journey entails embracing vulnerability. Tell me what you mean by that in the sense that I think when people think of vulnerability, they think about, just being open about stuff or maybe bleeding in front of people. I don't know. But what do you mean by vulnerability? Do you mean it's okay if you fail? It's okay if something
Well,
embarrassing happens. Yeah,
okay. Well, to say that it's quote okay to fail is
that's a
really
bad.
sort of,
That's not.
it's
Yeah,
dangerous because pretty soon you're a casual kind of entrepreneur saying, oh, it's okay to fail, we got to pivot fast and break things quickly and all that. It's not okay to fail. You should do everything you can not to fail. But if you do fail, you should at least learn from it, so you fail, at least you fail differently the next time. And so for me, if listen, when Julia Child went from being spook to being French chef, she had to embrace vulnerability. Because if you think about it, an American spook in France saying, okay, now I'm going to teach people how to cook French food. You don't think she was attacked by every chef in France? Like, who the hell are you, Julia Child, to say that you're going to write a cookbook about French cooking, right? So she had to be open to all these attacks and stuff. And when Jane Goodall, Jane Goodall is making the case that chimps have a social life and they can use tools. And every other biologist before her said chimps don't have social lives and chimps are idiots. They don't know how to use tools. So here comes Jane Goodall without a PhD in biology telling people, hey, I hate to tell you, I was in the field. I hung out with them. I'm telling you, they're using tools. You think they all like just said, oh, Jane, thank you very much. We believe you. Welcome to the party. I mean, she opened herself up to attacks too.
yeah. So yeah, Julia Child. Now that you mentioned that, she had to sell this cooking show, or
Right.
that's being vulnerable because people are going to dismiss you or reject you. So I think applying for a job, anything requires
Writing a book.
writing a book, putting your creations out there. That's vulnerability. It's not so much blabbing to the world something that's going on. It's just putting yourself out there, putting your chin up to be hit. That's what you're saying. Be brave there, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the example I also like to use is that at 60 I took up surfing, and as we talked about before, most people at 60 are not taking up a sport like surfing, right? I mean, they're sitting around watching Fox all day, maybe. But I mean, you can drown, you can get hurt. There is physical risk there. On the other hand, there's such great rewards from learning how to surf that it's worth it. And I think that's true of taking up anything new, whether it's cooking or surfing or playing the music or painting, whatever it is. Listen, if it were easy, more people would be remarkable. Trust me.
So what in your podcast and all the interviews you've had, is there one or two that had kind of more impact to you personally than the others?
Well, it's hard to come up with someone more remarkable than Jane Goodall. Really, I mean,
Really? Really?
yeah, I mean, she's about to make 90 years old. She's still at it. If you knew her travel schedule,
She's still
you
in the field
you,
work or
you would no, not studying
okay.
chimps, but she's
Okay.
now an ambassador for the universe, right?
Mm.
And her travel schedule, I swear, she goes to 100 countries a year. From the time she started her career till the 90s, she's so dedicated and she's so pure and she has such graciousness. And she's so busy, and she took out her time to write the foreword for my book. And then just last week, I asked her, can you do me a little 5-minute video? And everybody around her is telling me, gosh, she's so busy, she can't do it. I said, okay, I understand. And then this morning, I get an email from her saying, oh, I'm on my way to Tanzania, but when I get there at 10 p.m. Tanzania time, we'll get on the phone and we'll do it. I mean, that's grace. She
Yeah.
don't need me. She don't
Yeah.
need me at all. Right.
Yeah.
That's grace.
Yeah. I like your use of the word graciousness. I Neil deGrasse Tyson, you, people like you that they're very accomplished, very busy. You got your own podcast, Neil's on TV, but these people come on, they're just gracious.
Yeah.
And Neil said specifically, he goes, Larry, I'm giving back. I got a lot out of this world. I'm here to give back.
I think that the first third of your career, you're underpaid. The second third of your career, you're overpaid. And the third of your career, you pay back. That's how it works.
I like that. Like that a lot. Guy, thank you so much for coming on, man, and for being so gracious. And
I
and
had
the
a lot
book's
of
great.
fun.
So they find the book wherever, Amazon, everywhere.
Yeah,
And then
if you can't find the book, something's wrong.
Yeah.
It'll be like smog. It'll be everywhere.
And tell me the name of the podcast again. I'm going to put all this in our show notes.
The name of the book is Think Remarkable. The name of the podcast is Remarkable People.
Anything else, Guy, we should
That's it. I mean, we covered a lot.
Thank you so much, man, for coming on.
Thank you, Larry. All the best to you.
Well, that's a wrap. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, do share it with your friends and on your social platforms. Big thanks to Sam Williams, my audio guy, and the beautiful bumper music you're hearing is Michael Petrovich's Bella Luna. For all my show notes or resource links, visit larryweeks.com, and we will talk again soon.